Jackson's eyes snapped open to the hum of dying life support systems. The abandoned Terran frigate Nightfall had been his refuge for 3 days now, drifting in the neutral zone between human and Valdorian space. As a settler, he'd seen worse places to sleep, though the flickering emergency lights and the occasional groan of buckling metal made it far from comfortable. But something was different. Something warm pressed against his chest. He looked down and froze. A woman lay in his arms, her breathing shallow, her skin pale as moonlight. She wore ceremonial armor that gleamed even in the dim red glow of the emergency light's intricate plates of silver and gold that no human forge had ever produced. Her hair, dark as the void itself, spilled across his makeshift bedroll like a cascade of silk. Jackson's heart hammered. He recognized those markings on her armor. Everyone in the galaxy did. This was Empress Elizabeth Vasval, ruler of the Valdorian Empire, supreme commander of 600 star systems, and humanity's greatest adversary in the decade-long war that had only ended 3 months ago with an uneasy truce, and she was unconscious in his arms. Jackson carefully extracted himself, his mind racing. How had she gotten here? The Nightfall had been abandoned for weeks, left adrift after a skirmish near the border. He'd checked every compartment when he'd boarded. There had been no one else alive on this ship. He grabbed his scanner and ran it over her. The readings made his blood run cold. Radiation poisoning, severe dehydration, and something else, a biotoxin he didn't recognize. Whatever had happened to her, she was dying. The logical part of Jackson's brain screamed at him. This was the Empress, the woman who'd ordered the bombardment of New Terra, the leader who'd refused every peace offering until humanity had bloodied her fleets so badly she'd had no choice. He could leave her here, let the universe settle its own accounts. But Jackson had been a medic before he'd been a salvager, before the war had taken everything from him. Old instincts died hard. He scooped her up surprisingly light despite the armor and carried her to the medbay. The medical systems were barely functional, running on emergency reserves, but it would have to do. As he worked, injecting her with broad-spectrum antivirals and pumping her system with fluids, he couldn't help but wonder what series of catastrophes had led the most powerful woman in the galaxy to this abandoned human ship hours past. Jackson monitored her vital signs, watching them slowly stabilize. He'd seen soldiers recover from worse, but she wasn't out of danger yet. The biotoxin was stubborn, fighting every countermeasure he threw at it. As dawn broke, or what passed for dawn in the perpetual twilight of space, Elizabeth's eyes fluttered open. They were violet, Jackson realized, inhuman and mesmerizing, like twin nebulae compressed into a woman's gaze. "You," she whispered, her voice hoarse. She spoke in perfect Terran standard, though with an accent that made even common words sound regal. "You are human." "Yeah," Jackson said, keeping his distance. "And you're the Empress, which makes this the weirdest morning I've had in a while." She tried to sit up but fell back with a grimace. "Where am I?" "Abandoned Terran frigate, middle of nowhere. I'm a set. Found you about 6 hours ago, already in my sleeping area. No idea how you got there." Elizabeth's eyes widened, a flicker of something impossible crossing her face. "The assassination attempt. They used a void jumper. I remember falling through space-time. The device malfunctioned. I must have been thrown across systems randomly." "Well, you landed in my arms," Jackson said dryly. "Lucky you. Most humans would have spaced you, yet you saved me." It wasn't a question. She studied him with those impossible eyes. "Why?" Jackson shrugged, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. "Because leaving someone to die isn't what humans do. Not the good ones. Anyway, I have killed thousands of your people." "Yeah, and I've killed hundreds of yours. War's over now, though. Or are we still fighting?" Elizabeth was silent for a long moment. Then, impossibly, she laughed, a sound like crystal bells shattering. "No, we are not fighting. Though my council would consider it treason that I'm grateful to a human salvager for my life. Guess we'll keep it our secret then." Over the next 2 days, as the Nightfall continued its lonely drift, Jackson nursed Elizabeth back to health. They talked carefully at first, then with growing ease. She told him about the factions within her empire that wanted the war to continue, the assassination plot that had nearly succeeded. He told her about New Terra, about the family he'd lost, about the bitter taste of survival. "Your species is remarkable," Elizabeth said on the second night, as they shared rations in the dim medbay. "We thought you were simply aggressive, warlike, but that's not it, is it? You're survivors. You adapt. You endure." HFY, Jackson said. "What?" "Something soldiers used to say. Humanity. Fuck yeah. Stupid motto, but it kept people fighting when everything seemed lost." Elizabeth smiled, a real smile, not the diplomatic mask he'd seen in broadcasts. Perhaps not so stupid. When her rescue ship arrived on the 3rd day, summoned by a beacon Jackson had helped her repair, Elizabeth stood at the airlock. Her armor had been cleaned, her bearing once again imperial, but she looked back at him with something that might have been regret. "Come with me," she said suddenly. "Be my advisor. Help me build a real peace." Jackson shook his head. "I'm a salvager, Your Majesty. I pick through wreckage. I'm not exactly diplomatic material. You saved an enemy's life when you could have taken revenge. That is the most diplomatic act I can imagine. Maybe someday, Jackson said, "but I've got a feeling the galaxy's not quite ready for a human in the Valdorian court." Elizabeth nodded, understanding, but before she left, she pressed something into his hand, a small medallion bearing the Imperial seal. "If you ever need anything at all." Jackson watched her ship disappear into the void, then looked down at the medallion. He laughed despite himself. Only a human would accidentally become the Empress's savior by falling asleep in the wrong place. Humanity. Fuck yeah, indeed.